This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
More than 80 people killed in a fire caused by an oxygen tank explosion at a hospital in Iraq. Rebels in northern Chad offered to discuss a ceasefire and political settlement. And Egypt marks the anniversary of the return of all Sinai land, previously under Israel's control. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines. Scientists in Uganda decry the practice of self-medication in treating malaria, linking it with drug resistance. And Egypt eases some COVID restrictions to allow musical events during the holy month of Ramadan. We begin with developments in Iraq, where a hospital fire has claimed at least 82 lives in the capital, Baghdad. Authorities say the fire was caused by an oxygen tank explosion. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi has suspended the health minister, who's now under investigation. The fire broke out in the intensive care unit of a facility that tends to severe coronavirus patients. According to the spokesperson of Iraq's Independent Human Rights Commission, among those who died were at least 28 patients on ventilators.
An oxygen cylinder exploded inside the isolation unit. This unit is equipped with centralized oxygen system, so within 3 to 4 minutes the flames consumed everything. Patients in the intensive care unit needed oxygen. The fire took place in 2 wards, the intensive care and the 4th unit.
Deadly fires have been reported in hospitals treating COVID-19 patients in India and Iraq, all linked with oxygen supplies and storage. But what safety measures have to be in place in medical facilities handling oxygen tanks to prevent such incidents? Earlier, we discussed this issue with Dr. Aslam Dasu, a co-convener at the Progressive Health Forum in Johannesburg, South Africa. Here's what he had to say.
I think these are tragic events, and I think the COVID-19 pandemic has created exigencies which were probably not foreseen in a number of these institutions. Most hospitals, in fact, all of them of capacity, will have oxygen reticulation with the measures in place to mitigate any danger emerging from, sparks hitting this highly flammable gas. And generally, when in normal times, hospital use of oxygen is pretty well regulated. I believe in these moments, especially in crises areas such as in India, where oxygen supply has to be increased dramatically, the existing reticulation is often added onto, by new pipes, new machines, new cylinders, etc. And it's likely that the problem actually lay there, that where the installation may well have been faulty. But again, it's important to understand that the increased use of oxygen in these facilities during especially surges of COVID, where oxygen is the mainstay of treatment, the risk of an outbreak is much higher. First thing that all authorities have to do in hospitals is revisit and review their current fire regulations. In hospitals in particular, because of the immobility of patients, the evacuation of patients, for example, when there is a fire, is a difficult affair at the best of times. For obvious reasons, patients are immobile, they're on monitors, drips, etc., and it's difficult to manage them. I think the additional capacity for oxygen reticulation is firstly an area that must be properly managed. It must be done through, certified oxygen reticulation engineers. The people managing the process of increasing reticulation, bringing in tanks, etc., have to be qualified to do that. We might take it for granted that oxygen is just a gas. You stick a tank in and presto, you've got oxygen supply. It's not as simple as that. So qualified reticulation engineers have to be used. That's the first thing. Second, authorities have to be aware that a fire may break out at any given moment. It may not be in the reticulation system. It may be at the outflow areas, in wards, where a high oxygen content in the atmosphere will be amenable to a spark lighting things up, when in ordinary circumstances it wouldn't. So again, fire marshals, fire monitors, and proper regulatory approaches would be your best bet in minimizing these events.
Let's go to Chad now, where rebels from the Front for Change and Concord say they are ready to observe a ceasefire and discuss a political settlement. The announcement by rebel spokesperson Kingabe Oguzemi Detapo comes just 6 days after the death of President Idris Deby. The FACT rebel group came into Chad over the northern border from Libya on April the 11th. They were calling for an end to the 30-year rule of President Deby. Following the president's death on Monday, the Air Force has since bombed rebel positions in the north. Opposition politicians and civil society have called for peaceful protests and a national dialogue with a transitional military council to end the violence. On the 25th of April every year, Egypt marks the Sinai Liberation Day. This year, the event was held in the border resort city of Taba. The public holiday marks the return of all the land in the Sinai region to Egyptian territories after the last Israeli soldier left Taba in 1988. Here's Adel Amrouche with that story.
Right across the border with Israel, Egyptian officials and representatives of Sinai's Bedouin tribes stand to witness the raising of the Egyptian flag over the city of Taba. It is a tradition that started in 1988 when Egypt recovered all its occupied territories 15 years after Egypt's led 1973 war against Israel to liberate its occupied lands. Since then, every year, the border city raises the flag to remember the cost of war and the value of peace.
The flag is a symbol, and this symbol represents the whole country. And especially today, there was a lot of people from different categories. We are giving a signal that we all are together, and we are raising every year the flag on our lands, and it is a rewarding symbol, and repeating it every year is just refreshing the memory.
This celebration is a reminder that we freed our lands with three means. First, through the 1973 battle in October. Then Egyptian diplomacy pursued efforts to end the conflict. Finally, the third route was through arbitration. This celebration is for us to remember our past and the world to know that we are callers for peace.
To mark this year's celebration, Taba decided to shed light on its rich Bedouin culture. By the Salah ad-Din Citadel, an ancient fortress built to protect trade in the Red Sea, traditional dishes and dancing helped revive memories of this defining chapter in Egypt's modern history. Bedouins are natives of the Sinai who have for centuries preserved their way of living while keeping up with the modernity the government's development brought to the region.
On this day, we remind Egyptians that this part of Egypt needs more development. We want more Egyptians to visit Sinai city and to support it. We have a warm sun, coral treasures in the water, and we are the last governorship reporting COVID-19 cases.
Egypt's territories end at Taba. There, a striking fence stands on the mountain dividing two flags. During the 1973 October War, Egyptian troops managed to cross the Suez Canal, break Israel's defense line, retaking a fraction of the Sinai's area. The rest of the peninsula was returned to Egypt through political talks and international arbitration. Every piece of land here is a testimonial of the power of negotiations and peace that has surpassed all war efforts and brought back the last inch in Egypt's territories. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Taba, Egypt.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break. Here's what you can expect when we return. Scientists in Uganda decry the practice of self-medication in treating malaria, linking it with drug resistance. And Egypt eases some COVID restrictions to allow musical events during the holy month of Ramadan.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Let's go to Uganda now, where scientists there are concerned about the increasing cases of malaria drug resistance. They say the malaria parasite is becoming more resistant to treatment because of self-medication by some patients. CGTN's Hilary Yesiga reports.
Amina Bazarama can now smile with her son. Her son has been discharged from the hospital after battling bouts of malaria for a week.
Malaria plus.
We've been struggling with malaria for a long time. Before we were admitted, we had visited several other hospitals, and the findings indicated that my child had high malaria and bacteria infection, but he was not getting better.
Health workers say drug resistance in malaria treatment is now common.
In about 30% of the patients we get, they come in with resistance already due to the numerous and various types they have used before coming to hospitals.
A similar concern has also been highlighted in a recent Lancet report which showed that drug-resistant malaria is gaining a foothold in Africa. Ugandan health workers are now discouraging patients from self-medicating so as to reduce incidences of drug resistance.
Self-medication is the biggest complicator of all treatments that we give. So we strongly advise patients or people when they have signs and symptoms of malaria that at least they can come and have a test done.
Figures from Uganda's health ministry show that the country registers 25,000 cases of malaria per day. Doctors here say they treat 20 patients daily suffering from malaria. They are now encouraging the locals to use preventive measures like mosquito nets. The government is now promoting outdoor residue spraying and distribution of treated bed nets to keep the disease at bay.
Mosquito themselves, there are still plenty. So we are calling upon the people, let's try and work on the water lodges, your environment. If there are bushes, clear the bushes. If there are water lodges in the compound, make sure there are no water the water drainages are clear. If at all your house has got windows, and in the evening you close the windows so that mosquitoes not enter into the house, and you sleep under the mosquito net.
Through a campaign dubbed Under the Net, the government has so far distributed over 27 million treated bed nets. Health workers are now hoping that this and many other initiatives will help Uganda become malaria-free. Hilary Isga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
It's been nearly a week since a devastating fire swept through parts of South Africa's Table Mountain. South Africa's Environment Minister Barbara Creecy has praised the 1,000 fighters who battled the blaze. She said the fact that only 4 of them had been injured and that there wasn't a single loss of life was a testimony to their firefighting skills and training. Renee Delcarme reports.
The runaway fire broke out in scorching hot, dry conditions, and authorities suspect it may have been started accidentally by a homeless person in the Table Mountain National Park. The Minister of Environmental Affairs flew over the 650 to 700 hectares of land destroyed in the blaze to get an idea of the scale and impact of the event.
When you are up there and you see the damage, it's very tragic. The surface of the mountain looks like the surface of the moon. It's very, very tragic.
Besides the firefighters on the ground, government helicopters spent around 60 hours in the sky, dropping over 400 tons of water on the flames. And the minister said her department would have to put mechanisms in place to adapt to the effects of climate change in order to mitigate the risk of wildfires in future.
What I think we all have to understand is that we are all operating in the context of climate change, and climate change makes the likelihood of wildfires more possible. And that obviously means that in due course we will have to think about protected trees on the mountain. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? But those are questions for the future.
The minister paid tribute to the bravery, dedication and discipline of the firefighters who had worked around the clock to extinguish the blaze. She said even though the Table Mountain National Park fire had been really big and very bad, one got the sense that it could have been a whole lot worse.
For me, the only way that I will describe this fire, I will just say for the past week, it was a war without guns, where everyone at the end of the day remained safe.
There's a very clear line where the fire was stopped by our firefighters, and you realize the incredible work that they did to prevent this fire from spreading across the whole mountain. We are indebted as a society, as a city, as South Africans to these firefighters and their bravery, and we salute them.
2 independent investigations, one by South African National Parks and another by the University of Cape Town, are underway to determine the causes and liabilities of the fire. Renat Al-Kam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Egypt is slowly easing COVID restrictions for musical events, allowing an annual Ramadan musical festival to be back on the scene. It brings troops from various countries to perform religious music and chants in a spiritual setting for the holy month. Yasser Hakim reports.
Recital music lovers are again enjoying the Spiritual Music Nights festival after a year's absence because of the coronavirus.
The festival is an annual event that takes place every year in a different location or city. This time in the neighborhood of Sayyida Zainab, a part of Old Cairo, a popular destination for Egyptians to spend the Ramadan nights.
And the music blends with history inside El Sinai, a 300-year-old house renovated to become a renowned cultural center. Egyptian group Message of International Peace performed a unique mix of religious chanting that has inspired the guests.
What attracted my attention very much was the mix of religious Islamic and Coptic chantings. It was a beautiful musical and spiritual merge that I haven't seen before.
The founder of this event reflects on the symbols behind these songs.
Our message is to consolidate the essence of religion, which is love, tolerance, and peace. These songs have been widely popular here and affected many listeners with their meanings. We want to reach out to the world with these 3 principles.
The Spiritual Music Nights Festival is hosting groups from Sudan, Palestine, and Syria, but Indonesia was the guest on the opening day.
It's fun and important to know about other countries and open up to different music and cultures. I enjoyed it.
The traditional Tanura dance has also been the highlight of the night. The festival had to do with the limited attendance this edition to adhere with COVID-19 regulations, hoping next year it will be back to normal. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, it's time now for another show break and return your sports news, including we're looking at how efforts to have the now collapsed European Super League can impact Africa football.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We turn our attention to sports news now, and in the English Premiership, Chris Wood scored a first-half hat-trick as Burnley dominated Wolves in a 4-0 victory on Sunday, easing their relegation fears. Burnley got the better of their hosts after 15 minutes when defender Willy Bolly misjudged a long ball, allowing Wood to control and finish into the bottom left corner. Wood doubled the side's lead 6 minutes later with a simple tap-in after Dwight McNeil did the hard work of carving open the Wolves' defense. The two were soon at it again. McNeil found the New Zealand forward for a headed goal to round off his hat-trick before the break. Ashley Westwood added shine to the victory with a strike in the 85th minute after being set up by Wood. Burnley have now claimed their first victory in 4 league matches. The football world was filled with anger this week as the controversial European Super League plans were announced. But after strong opposition from fans all over the world, the project was stopped in its tracks. Here's CGTN's CS Duplessis with more on what these developments could mean for Africa's Super League ambitions.
The scuppered plans for the controversial European Super League have led to the owners of the clubs involved apologising to their frantic fans. And this debacle